I was in the middle of sanding a custom bookshelf when my workshop door rattled with aggressive knocking, the kind that makes your stomach drop because you know whoever is on the other side isn't bringing good news. "Quincy Irving, I know you're in there," a shrill voice pierced through the whir of my dust collector. "Turn off that racket immediately." I killed the power to my belt sander and opened the door to find Brenda Patterson standing on my driveway, arms crossed, lips pursed so tight they'd disappeared into a thin line. She was the president of the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association in Sacramento, California, and she looked ready for war in her crisp beige pantsuit, despite it being 7 in the morning on a Saturday. "Morning, Brenda," I said, wiping sawdust from my hands onto my work apron. "What can I do for you?" "You can shut down this illegal operation immediately," she snapped, thrusting a manila folder toward me. "We've received multiple complaints about the noise coming from your garage. This is a residential neighborhood, not an industrial zone." I took the folder, flipping it open to find a cease and desist letter on official HOA letterhead. My heart rate kicked up as I scanned the contents. They were giving me 48 hours to dismantle my entire woodworking shop or face daily fines of $500. "Bah, multiple complaints?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "I've been running this shop for 3 years. Who's complaining?" "That information is confidential," Brenda said, her chin jutting out. "The point is, you're in violation of Section 7.3 of the HOA covenants, which explicitly prohibits home-based businesses that generate noise, traffic, or commercial activity." "I make custom furniture," I said slowly. "I have maybe 2 clients a month who pick up their orders. I work normal hours, 8 to 5 on weekdays, sometimes a few hours on Saturdays. I've never worked past 6 in the evening." "The rules are the rules, Mr. Irving." She turned on her heel, then paused. "And before you think about fighting this, we've already consulted with our attorney. You signed the covenants when you bought this house. Ignorance isn't an excuse." I watched her march back to her white Lexus SUV, my hands gripping the folder hard enough to crease it. 3 years. I'd spent 3 years building up my custom woodworking business after getting laid off from my software engineering job. The severance package had been decent, but not enough to sustain me forever. Woodworking had started as a hobby, something to keep my hands busy while I job hunted. Then a friend asked me to build a dining table. Then another friend wanted a custom credenza. Word spread, and suddenly I had a legitimate side income that had grown into my primary source of revenue. I walked back into my workshop, looking at the tools I'd accumulated. My table saw, a saw stop I'd saved for months to afford, the jointer and planer I'd found used on Craigslist, the router table I'd built myself, shelves lined with hand tools, clamps, finishing supplies. This wasn't just a hobby anymore. This was my livelihood. My phone buzzed. It was my neighbor, Tom Martinez, from 2 houses down. "Hey man, I just saw Brenda leaving your place. Everything okay?" "Did you complain about my shop?" I asked directly. "What? No, I love seeing what you're working on. You built that amazing toy chest for my daughter, remember?" I rubbed my face. "Brenda says there have been multiple noise complaints. She's trying to shut me down." Tom was quiet for a moment. "That's ridiculous. I'll be honest. I can barely hear anything from your garage, and I'm home all day working remote. The Hendersons next door just got a landscaping crew that comes every week with leaf blowers louder than anything you've ever made. Can you put that in writing?" "Absolutely. I'll send you an email right now." I spent the rest of Saturday in research mode instead of work mode. The HOA covenants were 73 pages of dense legalese, but I forced myself to read every word. Section 7.3 did indeed prohibit home-based businesses, but there were exceptions listed. The language was vague, mentioning that low-impact professional activities were permitted with board approval. I'd never sought board approval because I didn't think I needed it. My workshop was in my garage, completely inside my property. I didn't have customers coming and going constantly. I didn't have employees. I didn't put up signs or advertise my address. Most of my clients found me through Instagram and word of mouth. Sunday morning, I drove to my brother's place in Roseville. Marcus Irving was a real estate attorney, and while HOA law wasn't his specialty, he knew more than I did. "They're trying to do what?" Marcus asked, setting down his coffee mug with more force than necessary. I handed him the cease and desist letter. He read it twice, his frown deepening. "This is aggressive even for an HOA," he said. 48 hours? That's barely enough time to respond, let alone dismantle a business, and $500 a day in fines is punitive. Can they do this? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Technically, yes. You signed the covenants when you bought the house. But here's the thing. HOA covenants aren't absolute. They have to be reasonable, and they have to be enforced consistently. If they're letting other people run home businesses without hassle, they can't single you out. How do I prove that? You need to document everything. Find out if anyone else in the neighborhood runs a business from home. Lawyers, consultants, people selling stuff online. Get statements from neighbors about the noise level. And most importantly, you need to look up California state law regarding home-based businesses. Sometimes state law supersedes HOA rules. I spent Sunday afternoon walking the neighborhood. Oakmont Hills was a planned community built in 2015, with about 200 homes ranging from modest 3-bedroom units to sprawling 5-bedroom estates. My house was somewhere in the middle, a 4-bedroom with a 3-car garage that I'd converted into my workshop. 3 houses down, I found a woman named Patricia Chen, who ran a graphic design business from her home office. She had a company logo on her email signature and regularly met with clients via video conference. The HOA knows? I asked her. I assume so, Patricia said. I've never hidden it. I have a business license with the city and everything. No one's ever said anything to me. 2 streets over, I discovered that Robert Kelso operated a consulting firm from his house. He had a separate entrance to his home office and met with clients in person at least twice a week. Brenda knows, Robert confirmed. She's actually friends with my wife. They have lunch together. The double standard was becoming clear. By Sunday evening, I'd documented 6 different home-based businesses in Oakmont Hills, all operating without any HOA interference. Monday morning, I called a lawyer whose name I'd found through the California Bar Association, someone who specialized in HOA disputes. Her name was Jennifer Booth, and her office was in downtown Sacramento. Mr. Irving, I've heard Brenda Patterson's name before, Jennifer said when I explained the situation. She's known for being particularly zealous in her role. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Jennifer's office was on the 14th floor of a building overlooking the Capitol. She was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and an air of competence that immediately put me at ease. Here's what I think is happening, she said after reviewing all my documentation. Someone on the HOA board has a personal issue with you, or they want to flex their authority. The 48-hour deadline is designed to panic you into compliance before you have time to mount a defense. Can I fight this? You can and should, Jennifer said firmly. California has a home business exemption law, Civil Code Section 4740. It specifically states that HOA covenants cannot prohibit home-based businesses if they don't create a nuisance, don't involve physical alteration to the property, and don't involve on-site commercial activity that substantially increases traffic or parking demands. My heart leaped. That's exactly my situation. Right. Your woodworking shop is inside your garage, so no property alteration. You have minimal client traffic. The noise concerns are subjective, but we can counter that with neighbor testimony. The law is on your side. What do I do? Jennifer pulled out a legal pad. First, we're going to file a response to their cease and desist, citing Section 4740 and requesting a formal hearing before the HOA board. Second, we're going to send them notice that any fines imposed will be challenged as unlawful. Third, we're going to document the selective enforcement by showing them all the other home businesses they're ignoring. How much is this going to cost? My retainer is $3,000. If this goes to litigation, it could be more. But here's the thing. If we win, the HOA has to pay your legal fees. It's part of California HOA law. They can't just harass homeowners without consequences. I wrote the check, watching $3,000 disappear from my savings account. But what choice did I have? This was my livelihood. The cease and desist deadline was Wednesday at 5 p.m. Jennifer filed our response on Tuesday afternoon, and by Tuesday evening, I received an email from Brenda demanding I attend an emergency HOA board meeting on Thursday night. They're scrambling, Jennifer said when I called her. They didn't expect you to lawyer up. I'll be there with you. Thursday evening arrived with unseasonable heat. the kind of Central Valley weather that made you want to stay inside with the air conditioning cranked. The HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a building near the neighborhood entrance that usually hosted birthday parties and baby showers. I arrived with Jennifer at 6:45 for the 7 o'clock meeting. The parking lot was more crowded than I expected. Apparently, word had spread that there was going to be drama. Inside, the main room was set up with tables arranged in a U shape. Brenda sat at the center with 4 other board members. I recognized 2 of them, David Yates, a retired dentist who served as treasurer, and Sharon Murphy, the secretary who always wore too much perfume. "Mr. Irving," Brenda said coldly, as Jennifer and I took seats facing the board, "I see you've brought legal representation. That seems excessive for a simple covenant violation." "My client is facing $500 a day in fines for operating a lawful home business," Jennifer said smoothly. "That seems excessive for what amounts to a hobby that generates occasional income." "It's not occasional if it's his primary source of revenue," Brenda shot back. "We've done our research. Mr. Irving hasn't had traditional employment in 3 years. This is a full-scale commercial operation." "Running a business from home doesn't make it a commercial operation in the sense that violates HOA covenants," Jennifer countered. "California Civil Code Section 4740 specifically protects home-based businesses that don't create a nuisance or substantially alter the property. Mr. Irving's woodworking activities fall well within those protections." David Yates cleared his throat. "The noise complaints are legitimate. We have 3 separate homeowners who've reported disruption." "I'd like to see those complaints," I said, "and I'd like to know who made them." "That's confidential," Brenda said. "Actually, it's not," Jennifer interjected. "HOA proceedings regarding rule enforcement must provide the accused homeowner with the ability to confront their accusers. That's basic due process. If you're basing your enforcement action on anonymous complaints, that's problematic." Sharon Murphy looked uncomfortable, shifting papers in front of her. "We can't just release people's names. What if there's retaliation?" "What kind of retaliation would there be for a legitimate noise complaint?" Jennifer asked. "Unless the complaints aren't legitimate, in which case this entire action is baseless." The back and forth continued for 20 minutes. Finally, David Yates produced 3 complaint forms. The first was from a homeowner named Cynthia Walsh, who lived across the street from me. The second was from Gregory and Linda Paulson, who lived next door. The third was from Brenda Patterson herself. "You live 6 houses down from me," I said to Brenda. "How can you possibly hear my tools from that distance?" "I was visiting the Paulsons when I heard the noise," Brenda said defensively. "And what noise specifically did you hear?" Jennifer asked, pen poised over her notepad. Brenda waved her hand vaguely. "Sawing, drilling, general construction noise. It was disruptive." "At what time of day?" "I don't recall exactly." Jennifer made a note. "Mr. Irving operates his workshop between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on weekdays, occasionally until 3 p.m. on Saturdays. These are standard business hours. There are no local ordinances in Sacramento that prohibit this level of noise during daytime hours." "The covenants don't require a local ordinance violation," Brenda insisted. "We have our own standards." "Standards that must be reasonable and consistently enforced," Jennifer said. "Mr. Irving has documented at least 6 other home-based businesses operating in this community without any HOA interference. Unless you're prepared to shut down every graphic designer, consultant, and online seller in Oakmont Hills, you're engaging in selective enforcement, which is discriminatory and unlawful." The board members exchanged glances. I could see the cracks forming. "We're not trying to discriminate," David said carefully. "But there's a difference between someone working on a computer and someone running power tools." "Is there a specific decibel limit in the covenants?" Jennifer asked. Silence. "Because if there isn't, you're making arbitrary distinctions based on your personal feelings about different types of work. That's textbook selective enforcement." Brenda's face was turning red. "This board has the authority to interpret the covenants as we see fit. If we determine that Mr. Irving's activities constitute a nuisance, that's our prerogative." "Actually, it's not," Jennifer said. "California law requires HOA boards to act in good faith and exercise their authority reasonably. If Mr. Irving believes you're acting in bad faith, he can take this to court and a judge will review your decision. Given the evidence of selective enforcement and the protection afforded by Section 4740, I'm confident a judge would rule in his favor. And when that happens, the HOA will be responsible for his legal fees, which are currently accruing at $350 an hour. That got their attention. I could see David doing mental math, calculating how much a court battle would cost the HOA. "Perhaps we should table this matter," Sharon suggested nervously. "Give ourselves time to review the law more carefully." "No," Brenda said sharply. "We've made our decision. Mr. Irving needs to cease his business operations or face the fines." "Then we'll see you in court," Jennifer said, standing up. "Mr. Irving will continue operating his workshop under the protection of California law. If you attempt to impose fines, we'll seek an injunction and file a lawsuit for harassment and selective enforcement. Discovery should be interesting, especially when we subpoena all HOA records regarding other home businesses." We walked out of the clubhouse into the warm evening air. My hands were shaking from the adrenaline. "Did we just win?" I asked. "We didn't lose," Jennifer said. "But Brenda Patterson doesn't strike me as someone who backs down easily. Be prepared for this to escalate." She was right. Friday morning, I found a notice taped to my front door. The HOA board had voted to begin fining me $500 per day, effective immediately, for continuing to operate my workshop in violation of community covenants. I took a photo of the notice and texted it to Jennifer. Her response came back within minutes. "Perfect. They just gave us grounds for a lawsuit. Are you ready to go all the way with this?" I thought about the custom dining table in my workshop, a commission from a client in San Francisco who was paying me $4,000. I thought about the 3 other projects lined up behind it, representing another $10,000 in revenue. I thought about the satisfaction I felt working with my hands, creating beautiful things from raw lumber. "Yes," I texted back. "Let's do this." Jennifer filed our lawsuit the following Tuesday in Sacramento County Superior Court. And we weren't just challenging the fines, we were seeking a declaratory judgment that my woodworking business was protected under California law, damages for the HOA's bad faith enforcement, and attorney's fees. The HOA's attorney, a guy named Richard Chen from a firm that specialized in community association law, filed a response 2 weeks later. Reading his arguments, I could see he was trying to paint me as someone running a commercial manufacturing operation out of a residential garage. "They're grasping at straws," Jennifer said during a strategy session in her office. "Their entire case rests on the noise complaints, but they can't prove your noise level exceeds reasonable limits, and they can't explain away the selective enforcement issue." What happens next? We have a case management conference in 6 weeks. The judge will hear both sides and set a schedule for discovery and motions. In the meantime, I'm going to depose Brenda Patterson and the other board members. I want to nail down exactly what their decision-making process was. Can I keep working? Absolutely. Don't let them intimidate you into shutting down. That's what they're counting on. I went home and got back to work. The dining table was coming along beautifully, black walnut with hand-cut dovetail joints and a hand-rubbed oil finish. Working with wood was meditative, each pass of the hand plane revealing more of the grain, each careful measurement bringing the piece closer to completion. But the stress was taking its toll. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning thinking about legal fees, wondering if I should just give up and find a regular job. My savings account was dwindling, the initial retainer was gone, and Jennifer estimated we'd need another $5,000 to get through discovery. Then, something unexpected happened. Tom Martinez started a GoFundMe campaign. "Support local craftsmen fighting HOA overreach," the headline read. He'd posted photos of the furniture I'd made, including the toy chest for his daughter, and explained the situation. "This is what happens when busybody neighbors try to shut down honest work," Tom wrote. "Quincy Irving is a talented craftsman providing a service people want. He's not bothering anyone. The HOA is overstepping, and he needs help fighting back." The campaign went viral in local woodworking communities. Within a week, strangers had donated over $8,000. People left comments sharing their own HOA horror stories, expressing solidarity, offering encouragement. "Holy cow," I said to Tom when I saw the total. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep building beautiful things," Tom replied, "and maybe build me a bookshelf when this is all over." The donations took the financial pressure off, but the emotional stress remained. The HOA continued sending me monthly fine notices, the total climbing toward $15,000. Jennifer assured me they wouldn't be able to collect, but seeing those numbers on paper was anxiety-inducing. The depositions happened in July. Jennifer took me along to observe while she questioned Brenda Patterson. The law office conference room was generic and sterile, all white walls and uncomfortable chairs. Brenda arrived in another pantsuit, this one pale yellow, with her own attorney. The court reporter set up her stenography machine while everyone settled in. "Mrs. Patterson, how long have you been president of the Oakmont Hills HOA?" Jennifer began. 4 years, Brenda answered crisply. "And in that time, how many home-based businesses have you taken enforcement action against?" "I'd have to check the records." "Approximately." Brenda shifted in her seat. "Mr. Irving's is the only one I can recall that required formal action." "Why is that?" "Because his creates a nuisance." "What specifically makes it a nuisance?" "The noise, as I've said repeatedly." Jennifer slid a document across the table. "This is a sound level report commissioned by Mr. Irving. It shows that noise measurements taken from the property line of his home don't exceed 55 decibels during operational hours. That's quieter than normal conversation. Were you aware of this?" "I wasn't consulted about any sound study," Brenda said tightly. "But you were aware that there's no specific decibel limit in the HOA covenants, correct?" "The covenants prohibit nuisances." "Define nuisance." "I know it when I see it," Brenda snapped. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "That's a subjective standard, isn't it? How is a homeowner supposed to comply with a rule that's based entirely on your personal opinion?" "The board makes decisions collectively, not based on my personal opinion." "Let's talk about that. When did the board first discuss Mr. Irving's woodworking shop?" Brenda consulted with her attorney briefly. "April of this year." "What prompted the discussion?" "We received complaints." "From whom?" "I've already provided those names." "Yes, Cynthia Walsh, the Paulsons, and yourself. 3 complaints out of approximately 200 homeowners. Did you verify the complaints independently?" "What do you mean? Did anyone from the board visit Mr. Irving's property to assess the noise level firsthand?" "I heard it myself when I was at the Paulsons." "On one occasion. Did you attempt to measure the sound level? Did you note the time of day? Did you speak to Mr. Irving about potentially adjusting his hours or methods?" Brenda's jaw tightened. "It wasn't my job to negotiate. It was my job to enforce the covenants." "But you didn't enforce them against other home business operators. Why not?" "Their businesses are different." "How?" "They're not using industrial equipment." Jennifer pulled out another document. "This is a list of businesses operating in Oakmont Hills. Number 4 is a home-based bakery run by Michelle Torres. She uses commercial grade mixers and ovens. That's industrial equipment. Have you taken action against her?" "That's different." "How?" "She's not doing it full time." "Actually, Mrs. Torres operates her bakery 6 days a week and generates her primary income from it. That's more commercial activity than Mr. Irving, who works 5 days a week with occasional Saturday hours. So again, why the differential treatment?" Brenda's face flushed. "I don't appreciate your tone. I'm simply asking you to explain the reasoning behind the board's decision. If there's no rational basis for targeting Mr. Irving specifically, that suggests bias or discrimination." "I'm not biased." Brenda's voice rose. "He was violating the rules, and someone had to do something about it." "Who had to do something? Who was demanding action?" Brenda caught herself, clamping her mouth shut. Jennifer let the silence hang. "Mrs. Patterson, was there someone outside the board pushing for enforcement action against Mr. Irving?" "I'm not going to speculate about motivations." "That's not speculation. I'm asking a factual question. Did anyone contact you directly to complain about Mr. Irving beyond the 3 formal complaints you received?" Brenda glanced at her attorney, who nodded slightly. "Linda Paulson spoke to me several times." "How many times?" "I don't know exactly. Several." "More than 5? Probably. More than 10? Possibly." "And what was the nature of these conversations?" Brenda hesitated. She was concerned about property values. She felt that having a commercial workshop in the neighborhood would impact resale values. Did she provide any evidence of that? "It's common sense." "Is it? Do you have any data showing that home-based businesses negatively impact property values in Oakmont Hills?" "No, but it stands to reason. So the board took action based on speculation and the complaints of one particularly vocal neighbor, despite having no evidence of actual harm and despite allowing numerous other home businesses to operate freely. Is that accurate? We were doing our job, Brenda insisted. Jennifer sat back. I have no further questions at this time. Afterward, in the parking garage, Jennifer looked pleased. That went well. She basically admitted they targeted you based on one neighbor's unsubstantiated concerns about property values. That's not a legitimate basis for enforcement. Linda Paulson, I said, the pieces clicking together. She's wanted to sell her house. I remember seeing a for sale sign in her yard last year, but it never sold. Interesting. We should look into that. Jennifer's investigator discovered that Linda and Gregory Paulson had indeed tried to sell their house the previous year. They'd listed it for $650,000 and gotten no offers. Their realtor had suggested the price was too high for the market, but Linda had apparently convinced herself that the real problem was my workshop next door. She's been obsessed with this, Jennifer told me after reviewing the investigator's report. She sent over 20 emails to the HOA board about your workshop. She's convinced that buyers are being scared off by the noise and the appearance of commercial activity. That's insane. You can't even see my workshop from the street. It's inside my garage. Rationality isn't always part of the equation with these things. Some people get an idea in their head and can't let it go. Brenda Patterson was a willing ally because she enjoys wielding power. The case management conference happened in August. Judge Theodore Larson was a no-nonsense guy in his 60s who clearly had no patience for petty disputes. Let me see if I understand this correctly, he said after hearing opening statements from both sides. The HOA is trying to shut down a home woodworking shop based on 3 noise complaints, despite having no specific noise standards in their covenants and despite allowing other home businesses to operate freely? Your Honor, this isn't about other businesses, Richard Chen argued. This is about whether Mr. Irving's specific activities violate the covenants. But the selective enforcement issue is relevant to whether the HOA is acting in good faith, Judge Larson said. Counselor, does your client have any objective evidence that Mr. Irving's workshop creates a genuine nuisance? We have the complaint forms from 3 homeowners. Complaint forms aren't evidence of a nuisance. They're evidence of complaints. What objective measurements do you have? Decibel readings? Traffic counts? Anything quantifiable? Richard Chen shuffled his papers. The covenants don't require objective measurements, Your Honor. The board has discretion to determine what constitutes a nuisance. Discretion isn't unlimited, Judge Larson said, and California Civil Code Section 4740 specifically protects home-based businesses that don't create genuine disruption. Ms. Booth, what's your position on a resolution? Jennifer stood. My client would like a declaratory judgment that his business is lawful under Section 4740, elimination of all fines, recovery of attorney's fees, and an injunction preventing further harassment. That's a tall order, the judge said. Mr. Chen, is your client willing to negotiate? We'd be open to discussion, Richard said carefully. Judge Larson set a settlement conference for 2 weeks later and strongly suggested both sides come prepared to compromise. The settlement conference was tense. We met in a courthouse meeting room with a mediator, a retired judge named Alice Foster, who had a reputation for cutting through nonsense. Here's my assessment, Judge Foster said after hearing both sides present their positions. The HOA has a weak case. Section 4740 likely protects Mr. Irving's business, and the selective enforcement issue is damning. If this goes to trial, the HOA will probably lose and end up paying Mr. Irving's legal fees, which are currently around $15,000 and climbing. Brenda looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. However, Judge Foster continued, litigation is expensive and time-consuming for everyone. Mr. Irving, even if you win, you're looking at months or years of legal wrangling. Is that really how you want to spend your time and energy? I just want to work in peace, I said. Understandable. Here's what I propose. The HOA drops all fines and acknowledges that Mr. Irving's workshop is permitted under Section 4740. In exchange, Mr. Irving agrees to some reasonable operational restrictions. Specific hours, perhaps a commitment to keep doors closed during operation, maybe annual sound level monitoring to ensure compliance with general community standards. Both sides walk away without further litigation. Jennifer leaned over to whisper to me. It's not a bad offer. You get to keep working, they can't fine you, and you avoid years of legal battles. What kind of restrictions are we talking about? I asked. The negotiation took 3 hours. Look, we hammered out an agreement. I could operate my workshop Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. No Sunday operation. I'd keep the garage door closed during tool operation and submit annual sound level reports showing compliance with Sacramento County noise ordinances. The HOA would dismiss all fines and acknowledge in writing that my business was permitted under California law. I can live with that, I said. Brenda looked furious, but her attorney was advising her to take the deal. David Yates and the other board members looked relieved. I got the sense they'd never wanted this fight in the first place. We signed the settlement agreement right there. Judge Foster witnessed it and congratulated everyone on being reasonable. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. You won, Jennifer said. Not in the dramatic courtroom sense, but you won what matters. You get to keep doing what you love. Thank you, I said. Seriously, I couldn't have done this without you. Just send me photos of whatever you build next. I'm thinking about commissioning a custom desk for my office. I went home and immediately got back to serious work. The dining table was finished and delivered to the San Francisco client, who was thrilled. I posted photos on Instagram and got 3 new commission requests within a week, but I was also curious about something. One evening, I walked over to Linda Paulson's house and knocked on the door. She answered, looking wary. What do you want? I wanted to understand why you were so opposed to my workshop, I said. We've been neighbors for 3 years. I've never had a problem with you before. Linda crossed her arms defensively. Your noise was driving away potential buyers. Did any of them actually say that? She hesitated. One couple mentioned it. One couple out of how many showings? That's not the point. What is the point, Linda? She sighed, some of the fight going out of her. We need to sell. Gregory's company transferred him to Seattle, and we're trying to relocate. Every month this house sits on the market costs us money. I thought if I could get rid of the workshop, buyers would be more interested. Your realtor said the house was overpriced. Because realtors always want you to lower the price. They make their commission either way. I studied her. She looked tired, stressed. I'm sorry you're having trouble selling, but shutting down my livelihood wasn't the answer. I know, she said quietly. I got carried away. Brenda was so eager to help, and I just convinced myself this was the problem. For what it's worth, I don't think my workshop is scaring anyone away. The market in Sacramento is competitive. Sometimes houses just take a while to sell. Our realtor finally convinced us to drop the price, Linda admitted. We're relisting next week at $600,000. Good luck with it. I walked back home feeling oddly at peace. Linda wasn't a villain, just someone under stress who'd made bad decisions. Brenda was another story, someone who genuinely seemed to enjoy wielding power over others, but even she'd back down when faced with legal consequences. The settlement agreement was filed with the court in September, officially ending the lawsuit. The local newspaper ran a small story about it, framing it as a victory for home-based businesses and a warning to HOAs about overreach. Tom Martinez threw a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate. Dozens of neighbors showed up, including several I'd never met before. Patricia Chen brought her family. Robert Kelso came with his wife. Even some of the people who'd stayed neutral during the conflict showed up to express support. You stood up to them, Tom said, raising a beer and toast. That takes guts. I just wanted to keep working, I said, but I was smiling. The fall was busy. I had more commission requests than I could handle, forcing me to be selective about which projects to take on. I built a custom entertainment center for a couple in Davis, a set of floating shelves for a boutique in Midtown Sacramento, and a beautiful hope chest made from cherry wood for a grandmother wanting to give it to her granddaughter. Each project was satisfying in its own way, the challenge of translating someone's vision into physical reality using hand tools and careful craftsmanship. The smell of fresh-cut wood, the feel of a perfectly planned surface, the sight of a hand-rubbed finish bringing out the grain. In these were the things that made the stress of the HOA battle worthwhile. One Saturday afternoon in October, I was in my workshop assembling a Morris chair when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked up to see a silver Honda Accord, and a moment later, Brenda Patterson got out. My stomach tightened. What now? She approached slowly, and I noticed she looked different, less rigid, almost uncertain. "Mr. Irving, do you have a moment?" she asked. "I guess," I said, not bothering to hide my skepticism. Brenda looked around my workshop, taking in the tools, the current project, the shelves of lumber along one wall. "This is quite an operation. It's my business." "I wanted to apologize," she said abruptly. "What I did, what the board did, it wasn't right. We let personal feelings override common sense." I set down my chisel. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm stepping down as HOA president. I'm retiring at the end of the year, and I wanted to clear my conscience before I go." She took a breath. Linda Paulson was very persuasive, and I let myself get caught up in her concerns. But more than that, I think I was looking for something to control. My husband passed away 2 years ago. My kids live out of state, and being HOA president gave me purpose, maybe too much purpose. I started seeing problems where there weren't any. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. "I'm sorry for the stress I caused you," Brenda continued. "What you do here is admirable. You create beautiful things. I should have recognized that instead of trying to shut you down." "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "I appreciate it." She nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "My daughter's getting married next spring. She's looking for someone to build a custom gift card box for the wedding. Something elegant. Would you be interested?" I couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, I'd be interested. Have her call me." After Brenda left, I stood in my workshop thinking about how strange life could be. 6 months ago, this woman had been my adversary, threatening my livelihood and peace of mind. Now she was apologizing and offering me business. The holidays came and went. I spent Thanksgiving with my brother Marcus and his family, grateful for his legal advice and support during the fight. Christmas was quiet, just me and some friends, but I spent the days leading up to it building wooden toys for a children's hospital in Sacramento. Watching the nurses distribute my handmade cars and puzzles to sick kids was more rewarding than any paid commission. In January, David Yates was elected as the new HOA president. His first official act was to draft a clear, objective policy regarding home-based businesses. It included specific criteria: no more than 2 client visits per day, noise levels compliant with county ordinances, no exterior signage, and annual registration with the board. It was reasonable and fair. "We should have had this years ago," David told me when he dropped off a copy. "Clear rules prevent conflicts." "I'm all for it," I said. February brought an unexpected development. A producer from a local PBS station contacted me about featuring my workshop in a segment about Sacramento artisans. They wanted to film a short documentary about my work and the recent HOA battle. "It's a good human interest story," the producer, a woman named Rachel, explained. "Small craftsman stands up to bureaucracy and wins. Our viewers love that stuff." I was hesitant about the publicity, but Jennifer encouraged me to do it. "It's good for business, and it shows other people that HOAs can be challenged when they overreach." The film crew came in March, spending 2 days in my workshop filming me, working on various projects. They interviewed Jennifer, Tom Martinez, and even got David Yates to talk about the new HOA policies on camera. Brenda declined to participate, which I understood. The segment aired in April, a 12-minute piece called The Craftsman's Fight. It was well-produced and fair, showing both sides of the conflict while ultimately concluding that the HOA had overstepped. The response was overwhelming. My Instagram followers tripled. I got commission requests from as far away as Los Angeles and Portland. By the summer, I was booked solid through the end of the year. I had to hire an assistant, a young guy named Carlos who was studying furniture design at Sacramento State. Teaching him techniques my grandfather had taught me felt like passing on something important. One warm evening in June, I was closing up the workshop when Linda Paulson walked over. She'd sold her house in December and was preparing to move to Seattle. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said, "and apologize again for everything." "You already apologized," I reminded her. "I know, but I feel like I need to do it again. I was so focused on my own problems that I didn't think about what I was doing to you. That's not who I want to be." "We all make mistakes under stress," I said. "I hope Seattle is good for you and Gregory." "Thank you, and congratulations on everything," I saw the PBS segment. You should be proud." After she left, I locked up the workshop and went inside. My house was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn. I made dinner, a simple pasta with vegetables, and ate on my back patio, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. 2 years ago, I'd been a laid-off software engineer worried about my future. Now I was a working craftsman with more business than I could handle, all because I'd refused to back down when someone told me I couldn't do what I loved. The HOA battle had been stressful and expensive, and at times overwhelming. But it had also forced me to stand up for myself, to learn about my rights, to discover that laws existed specifically to protect people like me. Section 4,740 of the California Civil Code was just words on paper until I needed it. And then it became a shield. I thought about all the other craftsmen and small business operators out there, working from home, trying to make a living doing something they were passionate about. How many of them had faced similar challenges? How many had given up rather than fight? That night, I started writing a blog post about my experience. I detailed the entire HOA battle, the legal strategy, the settlement, everything I'd learned. I posted it on my website along with links to the relevant California laws and Jennifer's contact information for anyone who needed a lawyer. Within a week, I'd received over 100 emails from people sharing their own HOA stories. Some had won their battles, others had lost, many were still fighting. I responded to each one, offering encouragement and advice where I could. One email stood out. It was from a woman in San Diego who ran a pottery studio from her home. Her HOA was trying to shut her down using the same tactics Brenda had employed against me. "Your story gave me hope," she wrote. "I was ready to give up, but now I'm going to fight. Thank you for showing that it's possible to win." I forwarded her email to Jennifer, who agreed to consult with the woman's attorney. A few months later, I got an update. She'd won her case, citing the same laws and arguments that had worked for me. That's when I realized the HOA battle hadn't just been about my workshop. It had been about establishing a precedent, showing that homeowners had rights that couldn't be trampled by overzealous board members. In August, I was invited to speak at a conference for small business owners in San Francisco. The topic was Navigating HOA Regulations for Home-Based Businesses. I'd never done public speaking before, but standing in front of 200 people sharing my story felt important. "The key thing to understand is that you have legal protections," I told the audience. "HOA covenants are powerful, but they're not absolute. State law supersedes private covenants when there's a conflict. If your HOA is trying to shut you down, don't panic. Document everything, gather evidence, and consult with an attorney who understands these issues." After the talk, dozens of people came up to thank me and share their own stories. A man who designed websites from his home office, a woman who taught music lessons, a couple who ran an online retail business. All of them had faced HOA pushback at some point. "We're not doing anything wrong," one woman said, frustrated tears in her eyes. "We're just trying to make a living." "I know," I told her, "and you have every right to do that." Fall arrived again, marking a full year since the settlement. My business was thriving. I'd expanded my workshop, adding a dedicated finishing room and upgrading several tools. Carlos had developed into a skilled assistant, and I was thinking about hiring a second person. One October afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Quincy Irving, the woodworker?" "That's me." "My name is Frank Sullivan. I'm a producer with HGTV. We're developing a show about craftsmen who work from home, and your story came up in our research. Would you be interested in discussing a potential feature?" I almost dropped the phone. HGTV? That was national television, not a local PBS station. "I'd need to know more details," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Frank explained they were creating a series called Home Workshop Heroes, profiling different craftspeople across the country. Each episode would focus on one person's journey, their craft, and the challenges they'd faced building a home-based business. "Your HOA battle is exactly the kind of obstacle story we're looking for," Frank said. "It's relatable. Everyone hates dealing with bureaucracy." I asked for time to think about it and called Jennifer for advice. This could be huge for your business, she said. National exposure, establishing yourself as an expert in your field, but make sure you read any contracts carefully before signing. These production companies sometimes want more control than you might be comfortable with. I spent a week negotiating with HGTV through their legal department. Eventually, we agreed on terms. They'd film for 3 days. I'd have approval over the final edit of my episode, and I'd maintain ownership of my image and story. The episode would air as part of the show's second season, probably in about 8 months. The film crew showed up in November, a much larger operation than the PBS team. They had multiple cameras, professional lighting, a sound engineer, the works. They filmed me working on a complicated piece of furniture that involved compound miter cuts and intricate joinery, perfect for showing the skill involved in fine woodworking. They also interviewed me about the HOA battle in depth. Frank was particularly interested in the emotional aspects of the fight. What was the lowest point, he asked during filming. I thought about it. Probably when I saw the fines totaling $15,000. That moment when you realize people are trying to destroy something you love, not because you did anything wrong, but because it's inconvenient for them. That was hard. But you didn't give up. No, because giving up would have meant letting them win. And more than that, it would have meant abandoning something that gave my life meaning. I wasn't willing to do that. The episode aired the following July, and the response was overwhelming. My website crashed from traffic. My Instagram gained 50,000 followers in a week. I got commission requests from celebrities, interior designers, furniture galleries. It was surreal. But the best responses were from other home-based business operators who said my story inspired them to stand up to their own HOAs. I heard from a jeweler in Arizona, a graphic designer in Colorado, a furniture restorer in Maine. Each one had faced similar challenges and found hope in my example. One email made me tear up. It was from a retired veteran who'd started making custom knives from his home workshop as therapy for PTSD. His HOA had threatened to fine him, but after watching my episode and consulting with a lawyer, he'd fought back and won. You saved my workshop and probably my sanity, he wrote. Thank you for showing that regular people can stand up to bullies. By the end of the year, I'd been operating my woodworking business for 5 years. The HOA battle felt like ancient history now, though its impact continued to ripple outward. David Yates told me that Oakmont Hills now had 37 registered home-based businesses, all operating peacefully under the clear guidelines he'd helped establish. You changed this community for the better, David said. People aren't afraid to pursue their passions anymore. I was working on a custom conference table for a law firm in December when I got a call from Jennifer. I have interesting news, she said. Remember Richard Chen, the HOA's attorney? Of course. He just referred a client to me. Someone in Folsom whose HOA is trying to shut down their home recording studio. He specifically mentioned your case as an example of why HOAs need to be careful about these things. I laughed. So we made an impression. You made precedent. That's better than an impression. That evening, I stood in my workshop looking at everything I'd built, both literally and figuratively. The tools on the walls, the projects in various stages of completion, the business cards from clients around the country. This space represented more than just a workshop. It was proof that standing up for yourself mattered, that laws existed to protect ordinary people, that community could triumph over bureaucracy. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Martinez. Barbecue this weekend? Everyone wants to celebrate your HGTV fame. I smiled and texted back. Absolutely. I'll bring dessert. As I locked up for the night, I thought about how different things could have been. If I'd given up when Brenda first delivered that cease and desist letter, if I'd let the 48-hour deadline intimidate me, if I had believed that HOAs were all-powerful and resistance was futile. But I hadn't given up. I'd fought back, armed with knowledge of my rights and the support of good people. The battle had been difficult and expensive and stressful, but it had also been necessary, not just for me, but for everyone who came after, everyone who would benefit from the precedent we'd established. Walking into my house, I noticed the framed copy of the settlement agreement Jennifer had given me displayed prominently in my living room. It was a reminder of what I'd won and why it mattered. The home business exemption hadn't just let me keep every tool running. It had let me keep my dream alive, my passion burning, my purpose intact. And in the end, that was worth every moment of the fight.